All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome in and happy, what day is it? Wednesday, October 5th. I'm joined with Jillian here next to me. Jillian, thanks for being here today. And we have a lot to talk about with relation to community, don't we?
We do, because I'm biased, but community is amazing, and everyone should be in one, especially if you're an entrepreneur, which we'll get into.
Exactly. We'll talk about how to find the right communities, what is the definition of the right community for you, and some tips and tricks to get the most value out of those communities as well. Actually, the reason why we brought this up is because nobody's talking about this kind of stuff, right? We talk about building communities quite often. We have a summit coming up later in the month, which is going to be a lot of fun, along with the team with the team over at Circle. But even just the idea of like being in a community, a lot of us are first timers in different communities, or we've been in communities where we just kind of sit there and don't even participate, or even if we do participate, we don't get a lot of value. Jillian, I'd love to know a little bit more about your experience with community before we dive in, and I'll share a little story on my end as well. But like, why are you so biased, and why are you in the field of community to begin with?
Oh, how much time do you have, Pat? Yeah, I mean, disclaimer, I am super biased. I've worked in community I've lost track after a decade. I stopped counting. So I've been in the biz, and specifically for digital communities for a very long time, since before it was actually so easy to launch one on a platform. But that's not why we're here today. I live in a very small community, like in real life. And so I think I've been drawn to digital community because of that. When
Mhm.
I was younger and was pregnant with my daughter, and just wanting to like find other moms, it's a very small community. So obviously I found people locally, but it was nice to have the digital aspect too and talk to people. Anybody who's been on like the Bump or like Baby Center, any of those websites, like those were like the OG forums where you could be like, is this normal?
Mhm.
And it kind of grew from there. It's just something that I'm passionate about. Especially I've worked in emotional health communities, and just knowing the power of bringing people together to support each other is just it's just a passion of mine now. So I'm lucky that that's what I do as my career.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you, Jillian. We'll have a lot more to discuss today for me with um, business and entrepreneurship and community. It really happened from the beginning. I got really lucky that I joined a community called Internet Business Mastery when I first started, and that allowed me to just not feel alone in this process. Right, a lot of us when we're going through, especially entrepreneurship, we feel like that we're the only ones doing it. The people that we speak to around us in real life, we often feel like they don't know what we're going through. They don't understand the language. And even when we're excited and we share something, we might not receive that back. And this is why it's important to be in these communities. Also, as I've grown as an entrepreneur, being a part of a community has been incredible for being able to do research and to find out more information that I can then use and input into my brands and businesses elsewhere. There's an art to it, though, which we'll get to today in terms of being a part of the community and not feeling like you're just taking all the time, not feeling like maybe you're just desperately asking for things all the time. But there is an art to it, and we'll definitely get to that. But for right now, this is really all about joining the communities and getting the most value out of it. And that's really what the goal is today. This is going to go for about an hour. And we would just want to help you understand how to maximize the value that you're getting from the time you spend in the online communities, specifically communities related to the work that you do online, right? Because there's a lot of communities that you might be a part of which are just for fun. And for those, I mean, you could still maximize the value that you get from them, but we imagine that you know how to go through those. And, if you're into fishing or crocheting or whatever it might be, I mean, you participate where you want to participate. But when it comes specifically to your business, there's definitely some things that you need to think about. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So going back to the keynote here, why does this even matter? What are the real reasons why we should focus on joining communities? Jillian, I'd love to hear from you first, then I'll go into it. But from my own experience and from the experience of people who are in our communities, SPI Pro and the learner community, I mean, there's so much value that can come from participating and joining a community, even if we're scared to do so. What in your opinion are maybe the top two or three reasons why we should even just consider joining a community? Why even bother?
Um, Only two. So I think
Because I want some too.
nice. I think some of the biggest main things, especially when we're talking about digital entrepreneurship, is just that sense that you're not all alone, and
Hmm.
that like being around people who understand. And I feel like everybody in the chat, which hello, by the way, thank you for being chatty. Everyone in the chat, I'm sure, and feel free to post like just think about a time when someone asked you what you do, or if it's a passion project, like what it's about, and you told them, and then they looked back at you just with like the deer in the headlight, like, what? You know, like if you
Hmm.
start talking about lead magnets or whatever it is, or you're talking about having a cohort based course or a community powered course or whatever it is, and then people just don't get it. And so it's finding those like-minded people kind of with this on the same trajectory as you. It's just really powerful to feel not alone, as I was saying, but also have peer support, be able to say, hey, will you look at this? And they already understand the greater context. And so you get that feedback, and it's just so nice. And
Exactly.
you kind of can like turn it into a marathon instead of a sprint. You have the grit and drive to keep on keeping on,
Hmm.
as I think Joe
Keep on
Dierte
keeping
would
on, and you
say.
can't keep on keeping
Yeah,
on by yourself. That's what I found for sure.
yeah,
Um,
life's
and
a
whenever you
garden,
get
dig
into
it.
these pockets of, just I don't know if I could do this, or I'm kind of stuck. The communities where you go first, right? That's where you get access to the other kinds of people who have maybe are going through the same thing with you or have gone through it before you, which is great. Big shout out and welcome to everybody who is in the live chat right now. We got like 156 people from Dawn to Fishin. We got Steph and William. Amazing Mr. Jesse says hello to you, Jillian. And for those of you who are just coming in, Jillian is our community director over at SPI, where she helps lead the charge with our communities. We hired her specifically for that reason because we know how important community is in our business, and it's becoming the center of our business with both SPI Pro and our learner community. She's just done such tremendous work having that kind of background to bring that into our audience and provide so much value. So I'm just grateful that you're here, Jillian. With me, with community and the benefits that I've gotten from even just participating have been manyfold, right? It's the ability to get answers to questions, like I said. It's the ability to be held accountable, to participate in events like what we have inside of Pro. We have our demo day where people at the beginning of a quarter, for example, could pledge what they're going to do. And then we have a space, we have almost like a stage for them to share those things at the end of the quarter. And just having the ability to know that there are people there watching over your shoulder and rooting for you, but also like you putting yourself out there in a safe space, a space that allows you to take action and get help along the way. I mean, it's absolutely huge. It's similar to the idea of going to the gym by yourself versus having a team of people that you go with who kind of can help you, especially when you wake up in the morning and you don't want to go to the gym, but you go together, and that's what it's all about: the togetherness, the belonging, collaborations. This is something that I have benefited from probably more than anything in being in these communities, is finding other people and not just like rooting for them and them for rooting for me, but us actually working together, doing projects together. Small things from like being a guest on each other's podcast to literally becoming business partners with some of these people. And again, to have that filter of that community specifically, where these are like-minded people who perhaps share the same goals as you, it's really, really amazing. In fact, in the chat, I'd love to hear some of the best communities that you are a part of. If you want to leave that in the chat, and I'll give a shout out to some of you. Is there an SPI Discord community? No, we run our communities on Circle. It's a little bit more of a professional platform. No offense to Discord. I'm in a number of Discord communities and have one for my Pokemon community, but it
Shots
it, it speaks
fired.
to those kinds of audiences more than like the professional entrepreneurial community, which is why we host them on Circle. Um, and then the other part of this is just the connection. Again, just not feeling alone as you're going through this process. As I've been speaking, Jillian, are there any other ideas and reasons why a person should even consider joining communities? Because I know there's like a mindset thing to this too. It's joining a community and feeling like maybe you're late to the party, right? It's almost like going to college 2 weeks late. Everybody knows each other already and you're coming in new, and that could be really scary. Or even just wondering if you're going to get value from it. Can you speak to the mindset of like getting into these communities and why bother going through it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it can be scary to your point, especially, depending on your personality type. You're jumping into this thing, depending on your tech savviness. Something I've been talking a lot, increasingly more about is something that I've coined. I'm sure someone has coined this before me, but what I thought I coined is digital etiquette and just how
Mhm.
to in digital spaces with people and what boundaries look like and all that. So, point being, it can be scary, especially I think too, there's still a little bit of this leftover um, kind of judgment, sort of like when online dating or like AOL chat rooms, that
Yeah.
kind of thing came out, and people are like, oh, and so they think of community that same way. But now you look at like online dating, and I know so many people that have met their partners that way, right? And it's great for a lot of people. I know there's a lot of horror stories too. I'm too old to have experienced it, but the point is, I think community gets that rap as well because people are like
Mhm.
forums and chat rooms. No, thank you, and it's not that. So one, just giving, give yourself permission to try it, and I think a big part of that, like, oh, I'm joining. It's like, and I did this many times growing up because we moved a lot, where you get thrown into a school, to your point, Pat, and it's already going on and you're late, and it's like cool, everyone knows each other, but any good community is going to welcome you, and that's
Mhm.
kind of a good test of if that community is a good space for you. So if you join and you put yourself out there, with a welcome post. We do say hellos in both learner and pro, which I can show you all in a little bit if you haven't seen it. uh, you know we encourage people to make a post and say, hey, tell us about you when you join. And then it's really fun because community members come in and reply and are like, oh, welcome, and based on what you said, might be like, I do that too, let's connect, or you should talk to so and so. And so that's a good indication when you join, if you have an experience like that, that's going to probably be a good community, and you will be able
Mhm.
to find your people.
Find your people. Exactly. And to that point, let's talk about like what to look for when, considering communities. And it's not just like you have to pick one only and that's kind of what you're sticking with. There are many communities that you can join. I'm in several and I know people here who are in several. In fact, there's a huge amazing list of people who are sharing a number of different communities, from Think Media to Live Streaming Pros, and I've seen a few others, some more hobby based, some also entrepreneurial. But let's say a person is out there and they're looking for their people. How do we go about understanding whether or not community we run into, right? Because they're there. You can find them, you can look them up, you can have conversations with people. It's fairly easy to do a little bit of research to find them. I think the bigger trick is, how do we know if that's the right community for me? Right. So let's maybe go back and forth, you and I, Jillian, in terms of, well, what would you look out for if you're trying to join a community because you want to connect, because you want accountability, because you need answers to questions? How do you know if a community is the right one for you? And I'll start by just sharing that, it really, for me, a lot of it depends on who's leading it. Right. I think that speaks a
Mhm.
lot to what I could expect when I get in there. Right. If I am following a creator online and they have a Patreon, for example, and they have a community, but I understand that this leader definitely wants this authority, podcaster, blogger, videographer, or what have you. It's just clear that in their content they are here to help people, and even they share stories from within that community. Then I can have like a good consideration that, okay, this community, there's something to it. I can already feel there are people who are in there who are thriving, who have success. It's when a creator just says, "Oh yeah, we have this community," and like really never even talks about it elsewhere, right? It's just a part of a pitch, and that's all. That's when there are kind of red flags, and I maybe try to do a little bit more examination and maybe find people in that community to see what the experience is like. But a lot of it is definitely based on, well, who is the person behind it or the team behind it. And hopefully, for those of you in SPI Pro and SPI Learner, can speak to how we talk about those places, and that we show up there as well. So that's one for me. How about you, Jillian?
Absolutely. And even, obviously we have a steaming variety of paid communities. I have, just on the flip side, I've worked for many a tech companies that have free communities. And I think those two, I mean, to their credit, they can really curate like wonderful community experiences. But I will tell you that as a community builder, and just from a sense of joy, managing paid communities is like a vacation for many reasons. And so if you're someone who's
Mm.
joined some communities and they were really spammy, or they were just kind of like mean or fighty, or whatever it was, and they were just kind of even if they had leadership, I will say I think paid communities kind of, the expectation is set higher because you're actually putting money down. And so
That is
those of
true.
us who run those, yeah, those of us who run those have to like provide the value. Otherwise, why would you pay for it, right? So I will put that out there as just kind of a thing. But that doesn't mean that um, free communities aren't amazing, and even peer run communities where there's not an actual leadership team. I think there's a place for those as well, especially if it's like a network of specific things, like a writing group or that kind of thing. However, having been a part of many of those, they very often start off hot and then they just fizzle. And before we got on this call, I went to LinkedIn to look at all the groups I'm in just out of
Mhm.
curiosity, because I don't participate in them. But I thought, well, surely other people do. Some of them are huge. It's just crickets. And
Yeah.
a lot of that is because it is kind of this, someone had an idea to start a group. Oftentimes it's because they want to grow, their reason for it might not be actually community. And so it fizzles.
Yeah.
I'm just taking a long journey in a little sailboat in circles.
Yeah.
I'll stop
I,
talking.
I I created a community in 2013 on Facebook. This was like a Facebook group. And it was a
Way
community
back.
that was built to sort of follow my progress of writing my first book. This was my first book, Let Go, which came out in 2013. And somebody threw out the idea like, hey, you should create a group and, build some buzz in there and write this book kind of publicly. And it worked. It worked really well and community was created. But then after that was done, I had no need for it anymore. And I feel terrible about that because my thought was, well, hey, like I'll gather a bunch of people in there and then, yeah, it'll run on its own. It'll do its thing and it'll be kind of automatic. Definitely not, right? Somebody has to show up in these communities to at least filter out a lot of spam, which nobody was doing that. That's like the first clear sign that you probably shouldn't be in that
Huge
community
fan.
is there's a lot of spam, right? That's going to be a quick thing. That and what you said earlier, like crickets. If you see that the latest active posts are from like 2 months ago, why would you even think that there's going to be any sort of engagement once you start joining, right? So it's really important to kind of do a little bit of research there. But the intention behind the community leader, Don proposed a great question here that one could ask a community leader or a team, which is tell me about the team behind your community. And if they say like, oh, it's kind of just there on its own, well, that says a lot about, well, how much care are you going to be having once you're in there? So I love the discussion that's happening in the chat about this right now. This is really, really important because in order to maximize the value, and we'll talk about this in just a second here, in order to maximize the value in these communities that you're in, you do need to participate. You do need to spend time. And it's just such a deflating feeling to have this excitement to join a community, to spend some time in there and actually do what you are supposed to do, and yet you're getting nothing back, right? A community is definitely a give and get situation, right? It's not just all give, it's not just all get. There's sort of collaboration there. But when you get into a community and there's a welcoming feeling to it, when other members are welcoming you there as well, when people are sharing their wins and what has been going on. And I think another great sign for community. So I joined recently I joined a bass fishing community, of course, because I'm
Of
into
course you
bass
did.
fishing now. Honestly, one of the fastest ways to learn anything is to join a community of people who are doing the thing already. Because yes, they'll have answers to your questions, but they're likely talking about things that are like not way beyond, but like beyond your level of understanding, but almost force you. It's like almost like moving to another country without having spoken that language yet. You're almost kind of forced to figure it out, right? So it's one of my favorite ways to learn. Anyway, I've joined this bass fishing community, and how I knew this was going to be great was looking at the discussions that were already happening, and
Mhm.
some people really opening up. Right? You wouldn't think that bass fishing community, it just might be like, hey, what lure worked today? Some people are spilling their guts in there and sharing their life story, and the replies to that and the care from the other members is what got me excited, right? Wow, people are actually making these level of connections here about bass fishing, and this is what you find. a lot of times it's not even just about the topic. The topic is the common thing of interest that just brought you together. But all the communities that are great are often the same. It's belonging, it's care, it's culture, and it's just a beautiful thing when you see it working. So these are the kinds of signals and signs that you can kind of look for. Is there anything else before we move on, Jillian, in terms of signs and signals and red flags, if
Yeah.
you will?
There's so many red flags. No, I love just listening to this because even like I'm excited about this bass fishing community, and I don't even know if I could like identify a bass fish. And I think most of what I know about it comes from talking to you, like in passing, where you mention a kayak or whatever. But it's that like you find people who are just excited about something and want to talk
Mhm.
about something that you do, and it could be a hobby, like fishing or like knitting. Ravelry is a great example of like a huge knitting and crochet community, or I should say a fiber community. But it could also be about growing your email list. It can really, sky's the limit. And when you find those people and they're having those conversations, and one, your partner doesn't have to listen to you talk about lures for 10 minutes because you're going to be talking to your friends on this community. Just guessing here, just throwing total guess that April's like, thank you.
Yeah,
But
there are
it's
like
just, it's
topics
magic.
like business. She knows that I am a business owner, and we talk very lightly
I
about it.
hope
But
she
once I
knows
start
this.
getting deep, she's just like, "This is for your people. This isn't for me."
It's
Same
like,
things happen with
get on you.
Pokemon, and same thing is happening with bass fishing. Trust me,
That's
we do
cute.
have a lot of things in common that we do talk about, but it's not those things. Those
Not
things
those
I talk
things.
about in these
Yeah.
communities, right, with other super nerds who are also outcasted by their spouses, and we can all just kind of
Uh,
connect with each other, right?
I
So
love it. One of
that's the
these days, I just want to talk to April and let her just be like, "Oh my gosh, Pokemon." I just want to know. I want to know what she thinks. We
yeah.
need like hot takes with April.
She's like,
That
"Yeah,
could be a
he's
whole
my other
community.
kid."
Yeah.
It's basically how it
Yeah,
is.
that's like when Dylan starts talking about like the stock market, and I'm like, "Call a friend. I don't care."
Oh yeah.
Um,
Right now,
yeah,
everybody
and
who's
you
in the
can.
stock market just needs a support group. Really, that's what they
They
need right
do.
now.
There's an idea. Everyone listening.
Yeah, a stock support group.
um, Stock support.
Yeah.
When they're
Anyway,
down, they're down.
let's keep going here because we
Yeah.
just talked about sort of finding communities and understanding whether or not a community may or may not be the right fit for you. And I think the last point on this is to your point earlier, which is like give it a shot, give it a chance, like get in there, get involved, and just because it passes all the tests, it still may not be the right fit for you, right? Because you still have to feel like it is something that you could get a lot of value from. That said, you have to give it a chance, right? If on day one it's just like, well, I don't think this is for me. It's like, have you given it a chance? I would say like a week or so in a community, you'll get a clear understanding of the vibe and how valuable
Yeah.
it can be for you. But speaking of value, let's talk about when you are a part of a community. How might you get the most value from it? And there's a balance there, right? Because as I said earlier, we don't want to come in and just take. And we don't want to also, this has happened with a lot of communities that I've joined. I end up becoming, and a lot of people know who I am. And when I show up in these communities often, then I become the expert and I just am getting asked questions all the time and I'm not getting value. It's important for you to receive value as much as you are giving it too. So, maybe I'll start with, we can go back and forth just like we have been as far as getting the most value. I think it's really important for you, and this is in no particular order either, but my favorite way to get value from a community is to use direct message features to connect with individuals in there. Yes, it is about community and the group as a whole, but within that group, I love connecting directly with people. I found that I get the most value and build the deepest friendships in that way, right? It's like going to an event, and I think I talked about this in my book, Superfans. But, I went to an event once and it was this giant event and I just kind of feeling lost, and I'm an introvert, so I kind of just sit in the corner. And then I noticed another person sitting in the corner and we had one thing in common. We both left our 1-year-old at home to be at this event. And as a result of understanding that about each other, we like latched onto each other, right? We became like best friends from that point forward. And he's no longer doing online business, but we are still in touch every once in a while. Um, but if we didn't have that just like small intimate conversation about each like that thing that was in common, then we wouldn't have made that connection and be able to support each other through that event, which was very overwhelming. So just all that to say, if you find somebody who is interesting, reach out to them and just introduce yourself and say hello. The caveat with this is don't ask for anything up front, right? I think that's the big thing. We want to, as Jordan Harbinger says, you want to dig your well before you're thirsty, right? If you're digging your well before you're thirsty, that's you adding value and just connecting with people and getting an understanding of who else is there. That's awesome. But if you're digging your well and you're thirsty, which is the equivalent of, hey, nice to meet you. By the way, I have this ebook and I would love to know if you'd like to buy it or maybe even promote it, then it's never going to come. You're thirsty, right? And so that's not going to work out. So don't fall into thirst traps, I guess you could say. That's my tip number one. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off that, I think giving a community a chance and really just being open-minded on maybe it's a little different than you expected, maybe it's overwhelming, maybe it's underwhelming, but just poke around. Like honestly, be nosy, depending on the size and just busyness. Nose around, snoop around, see like what are all the places you can engage? Are there events? Is there a list of events? And take a chance. I think that's a big part of it because oftentimes people get excited and they join a community and then they just kind of sit there and wait and they're like, okay,
Right.
what's going to happen? And unfortunately, I mean, even like our communities, we do our best to say, hey, here's some onboarding, here's how you learn the lay of the land. But it's still up to you to make that say hello post. It's up to you to jump. So jump. Do it.
Jump.
And and try it out. Try an event if events happen. Post something. Post a question or something that's happening. I'm being very vague because it depends on what kind of community you're joining. But put yourself out there and see if you can make connections. And if someone responds and you connect with them, like you can send them a DM. It's not, if your platform has that, it shouldn't be creepy, even though if you're not used to digital communities in particular, it might feel weird. Again, it's like kind of that old, like, oh, is this like an AOL chat group? Gross. But it shouldn't be like, follow the rules. Right. And you should be fine. I also think finding a buddy. So if like Pat, like you basically said this also now that I'm saying it out loud, you found that person that also had left their kid and that was for the day. And that was the commonality that bonded you two at an event. And the same can be done in digital community. Maybe there's someone that is doing something you think is interesting. And so you just kind of reach out and establish a bit of a relationship with that person within the community. And then now you have someone you can ask questions like, hey, like, how did you get invested in this? Or like, what are your favorite parts of being a member? Ask members and they will tell you, and that'll kind of give you a jump start of like where you should focus or where you can go to find other people like that.
I love that.
You kind of just have to jump.
You have to jump. And on that note, to piggyback off of what you just said, a lot of communities, not all, but like ours, for example, we have people who have profiles and we have directories where you can kind of search for different people based on interests and location even and those kinds of things. And those could be great things to just start conversations with. Hey, I see that you're also a Star Wars nerd. I saw it in the back of your profile picture. Like, me too. What's your favorite movie? Things like that. Yeah, definitely Star Wars nerd over here. One of my favorite things, I do this and it works so great in every community I joined. I even just did this last week in the bass fishing community I was in. And this is a hot tip. If all of you could take one thing away that could get a ton of value for you, this would be it. And that is to create an epic post that is valuable for the other members that are in there. And so, case in point, in this bass fishing community, right? And specifically, I'm in the San Diego bass fishing section because that's where, I want to know what's going on in the other lakes and see what's working and help each other out. So I went fishing 2 weeks ago at this lake. And I said, you know what? I'm going to come into this forum and I'm just going to offer the best report anybody's ever seen on fishing on this lake and what it's like right now. So I created a 750 to 1,000 word post about my time fishing. And it wasn't like a journal, like, oh, I woke up in the morning, and it was like very specific. Here was the water temperature. Here was the barometric pressure, because I have that on an app. Here are the lures that I used. Here's what worked until what time. And then from there, I moved to this part of the lake. I had a map and I drew on it, all this stuff. People were blown away. So much so that I got thanked. I had people reach out and respond to me and said, hey, that was an epic report. I wish everybody wrote a report like that, right?
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is quickly you get to become somebody who's already provided value to everybody else. And this hasn't happened yet in the San Diego bass fishing community that I'm in, but this has happened in other communities, is when you do this, the community leader will notice, especially if there's a lot of conversation or chatter about it, and then you can build a relationship with that community leader. I've seen this happen so many times. In fact, there is a friend of mine, his name is Brian Harris. You might remember him. He's been on my podcast before. He had a business called Video Fruit. And what happened was he was in Noah Kagan's community for marketers. And what Brian did, he said, you know what? I'm an expert in creating video sales letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop so much value right now. And he created this long post this was just in a free Facebook group. That was all about the framework and the understanding of how to create a really good high-converting sales page letter or a sales video. And what ended up happening was so many people responded with, oh my God, this is gold. Can you, this is incredible. Can I hire you? How might I do something like that? And then, of course, a lot of more questions, answers, all within just like a public thread. And then what ended up happening was Noah, the founder of this group, reached out to Brian because of the noise that this post was creating, and ended up becoming a case study of his and featured on Noah's main sales page, and getting support from Noah and his team to help him get some mentorship and that sort of thing. It's almost obvious that this is something we should do. Hey, go into a post or go into a forum or community, and don't just show up and start asking for things. Show up and share your expertise. And through that, people will get introduced to you and what you have to offer. And it's yeah, why don't we do that? Right? It works really, really well.
It does. That's such a good point. And as on the flip side, as being someone who often is managing or leading a community, when I see a post like that happen, and there's a few people in the chat that do this, I think I saw Dan in here earlier who just rebranded.
Yay.
Props. People will come in and just post something that's just like, hey, I know about this thing. Let me tell you about it. And when I see those as a leader of community, I'm immediately sending that person a message, gonna learn more about them. This is the kind of thing I want to see in my community, And so flip that to being a new community member trying to kind of find your way and maybe fit in. It's that providing value thing that we always come back to, right? And if you do that and people are kind of ignoring it or whatever, that's also, again, that's good. Cause then, okay, this community doesn't really value, a well thought out share like this. Maybe this isn't where I want to be. Cause that's the kind of stuff I want.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or maybe that's not what it's about. Right. You have a clear understanding that that's not what it's about. It's actually a place some communities are places to come together because it's a commonality, but to actually escape those things. Right? It's hey, entrepreneurs, come here so we can just talk about life, right? Business, let's not talk about business here. And you'll very quickly understand. But typically when I see somebody do this, yes, it does for me as the community leader. And you just said for you too, it definitely catches our attention because most people aren't doing that. And that's cool. And then what happens is you become potentially known for something, and sometimes we even invite those people on to become sort of guest experts, or they sometimes have come on the podcast as a result. I mean, so many great things happen when, again, you serve first. This is the thing that I'm going to keep drilling in everybody's head, serve first. So it sounds like everybody's really loving that tip and getting some value out of here. Randy said, this is all new to me and I'm learning a lot. That is great. If you're here watching this live and you're learning a lot, hit me up with a fire emoji in the chat right now, just so I know that this is working for you. We also wanted to share a little bit about our own communities, right? And Jillian came on board when we were building SPI Pro, and it just transformed it into what I feel is the best community for entrepreneurs. And we wanted to share it with you a little bit. Again, there are a lot of free communities out there you can join, and LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups. I don't want to say those are bad. You have to do the work to find them. And what we wanted to do with SPI Pro is to create a space for entrepreneurs to come who were established to come together to share the same language and to get support from each other. And this is a premium community, but we'll show you around to see what that looks like. So maybe you can even see some examples of what a good community looks like on the inside, so you can find that elsewhere as well. And then we also just recently launched our SPI Learner community, which is for the beginner level entrepreneurs in the house who may be interested in joining too. And both of those come with a price, but the learner community is much less. And Jillian, if you wanted to go and share your screen, we can maybe give them a tour and also give you an idea of what Circle looks like. Again, there are Discord communities that you could join and other things, but these are our communities, and we're so grateful to have them. And we'd love to invite you into them as well. But let's get Jillian's screen up on here, and she's showing you our SPI Academy right now. We see it.
Excellent. Yay. Yeah. So, of course, we want to let people know, just make sure everyone knows that we have a couple community options. If you are looking for an entrepreneurial community that is safe, there's no soliciting. We have community guidelines. We have paid staff. In fact, we have a separate community manager in each space that does that full time. So these are our spots. We obviously are very dedicated to community and specifically helping people launch the business of their dreams. So, our learner community, you can just join. We'll give you links later so you can look into this in more depth. But basically, this is you pay. It's about $30 a month, so it's very affordable. This is our head post here, our home post here. But you can see over here, and if you haven't seen a Circle community, you're probably like, what? And if you are in Circle communities, this probably looks very familiar because a lot of people really like the way we organized ours and have similar looks. So you can see in our learner community, there's all these different spaces, everything from that say hello again, as I was telling you about. A huge part of learner is accountability. This community is really designed for, I struggle to use the word beginner, but it's if you're just trying to kind of figure out what it is you're doing with a business. Maybe you aren't making a ton of revenue yet. This is our community manager, Ashley, that kind of thing. This is the place for you. You can see you get a shiny badge that says you're a learner. We have events. We have lots of places where you can post and get feedback from people. You can kind of see bunches of other members who are in here. Actually, a bunch of these are our pro members, which get complimentary access to Learner. It's a great place. And then this is also where our course communities are. So if you've ever purchased a course from us and signed up for the community, especially when we took it off Facebook, because we did, that's a whole other conversation, lots of opinions. You're probably in one of these, and also office hours. And then there's some fun stuff happening here that is top secret, but you can learn about later in the month. So then, of course, we have SPI Pro, which is a higher price point. Oops, I meant to change this before this call and I didn't. Whoops. And it's $99 a month, and this requires an application. And if you apply and get in, you can join as early as tomorrow if you apply and get in. So don't hesitate. And in here, we just have more structure going on. You can even see with the events, there's more. In Learner, we have about 3 events a month. In Pro, we have several more, including Asking Experts. And we just had the October Ask an Expert earlier today. Next month's expert, Pat pulled some strings, and it's Ali Abdal. So we're pretty excited about that. We also have mastermind groups in Pro, and that's a huge, huge part of the membership. So you can join a peer-led mastermind group, and we've found that is one of the biggest value adds for this membership, specifically because it's members helping members. We have a bunch of different groups. You can see here's some of the events. We always have so many announcements. I also almost hesitate to go here. You can see we just welcomed a new team member, Sandy, who is in the chat. Hello, Sandy. She's part of the marketing team. Yay. And then we have topic spaces. So I have all of these minimized because I'm in all the spaces, and so it makes it faster to get around. But we have monetization and audience building topics. You can see video, email marketing are popping. And this is just really where you can go and talk to people who you have a business, you're making some kind of revenue. It may not be your full-time gig. You may not have it all figured out. Who does, right? We don't, right? Hot takes. But like, you come in here and you find your people that are maybe at your level, maybe a little bit ahead. There's tons of stuff. And then we have some fun things too. Like we have an amazing book club. We have all of our quarters. We recently just launched a BIPOC and an LGBTQIA plus like member communities for our members who want a space for that. It's really fun. And then, of course, we have our MBA community, which is right now still in beta. And you have to be a member of Pro to join that, but it will be released to the public in January. So stay tuned. And that's our next level of advancement. So you're making regular revenue and you're ready to just like blow it up. So that's the MBA. So we kind of have a place for everyone depending where you are. And we love it. I don't want to click into the masterminds because that's where like a lot of amazing conversations are happening, but we like to protect, they're meant to be like closed spaces, tons of interest groups. It's a blast.
It's a blast.
But as you know, I'm biased.
It's an absolute blast. Thanks for sharing with us a little bit of a tour. And I'm going to flip this back. And now you're on the left side, but I'm not going to try to fix that. For those of you who might be interested in joining one of our communities, again, we have something for you at no matter what level you're at. Head on over to smartpassiveincome.com/community. You'll see a lot more information there. We have the learners, and we also have Pro with an application process, and even the MBA program for you if you're a little bit at a higher level and want to get into the weeds of the business and talk a lot with Matt about spreadsheets and projections and those kinds of things. Massively valuable. But I do want to spend some time answering questions. There's been a few questions in here. A question earlier that I saw was with relation to like courses, right? So we have our courses, and they currently live on Teachable, but we also have our communities and the support areas as well as the communities for these courses hosted within Circle. And the beauty is Circle and Teachable speak very well together, right? And they have a single sign-on, and it's like one place that you can go to get feedback, get questions answered, etc. Circle just recently launched their courses platform, however, which we're exploring right now, and it's just like so new as it was like last week that they let everybody in. So we're exploring that, and that could be an option. It would make sense to do that, but we want to make sure we do things right. And for right now, our courses and community still talk very, very well together, which is great. But if you are a creator and you have courses, I would highly recommend seeing how you might be able to inject a community as a part of that. Ours come with the courses that we sell inside of the Academy. However, I know a lot of creators, and actually a lot of them recommend to me that we do this, but I don't feel like it's the right thing to do for us, is that they charge extra for the sort of course-specific communities that are behind it. Now, that being said, we do have other things like boot camps, which are more intensive workshops that we meet very regularly every week for a certain number of weeks to get through a course, and that's a little bit different. But as far as like the connections and the collaborations that can happen, those are separate for right now. But again, we are seeing so much more results from students who do take the time to end up speaking to and connecting with other people. I think that's just the nature of what's happening right now, is this trend toward community-powered courses. And that's really exciting to us because it's not even a gamble. It's not even a gamble. We are trying to be at the forefront of community and education here in the entrepreneurial space and lead by example. And hopefully we're doing a great job of that. And this is partly why this conversation is really important today, because we know that there's going to be a lot more communities popping up for you to join, whether it's ours or somewhere else. And we want you to find the right communities and maximize the value that you have in there, and everything from making sure that the community was set up for the right reasons, to going in there and those great first impressions that you could make, and connecting with other people in the DMs. Like, these are all strategies to help you maximize your time there, because that's the big thing, right? The big thing here is that in order for communities to work, no matter where you're at, you do have to spend some time in there. And that's key, because just signing up for a community, just signing up for an online course, is not going to get you the result or the transformation. It's the work and the effort that's within there. Do you have any advice, Jillian, before we go to questions, for those who they want to maximize the value that they're in there, but they've just kind of been sitting there for a while and kind of expected initially for things to happen automatically, but it's obviously that's going to take some work. What would you say would be the best time spent being in the communities that they're in?
Oh, that's such a good question. So, if you're already in some communities and maybe you haven't logged in for a while or just have, you're just kind of not in there, I would challenge you this week, like by Monday, go log in and make any sort of post, depending on what kind of community is, and reply to, let's call it 3 other posts. Just go in there and jump in and see what that gets you. Because 9 times out of 10, just doing that, you're going to spark conversations, even if you posted on something, that you can't provide, say, like advice, but you
Mm.
can, and I think what Don and Eva are talking about in the chat, just to show someone that you see them and you're holding space for them, even something like that, to just say, hey, I just want to let you know I see you. Whatever it might be, or maybe it's someone's asking a question and you have an answer, whatever it could be. Do that, make a post, depending what the community is, right? Just something relevant, something in the community guidelines, of course, not soliciting, like, the basics, but just something, whether you just want to do a quick share of like, hey, I worked on this thing and here's how it ended up. Here's kind of the report. Or if it's a question or whatever it is, and just see how far that gets you. Just posting your own post, but then also replying to a few other people's posts. I think that's a great way to just kind of like dip your toe back in. You're not saying, hey, I want to start a group within the group to do this big thing. No, you're just participating.
Yeah.
And from there, see what kind of replies you get, what connections happen, and does that inspire you to post again or talk to someone or DM or whatever. That's a great way to just kind of like test the waters. Like, is this still right for me?
Right. Thank you, Jillian. I love the conversation that Eva and Dawn are having about being a part of in these groups, and also just wanting to feel like you belong to something, that you're in a community, not because you need somebody to tell you all the answers or even like necessarily guide you exactly where you need to go, but just so that you're with other people who understand. And that's what a lot of us have been craving. And as a creator, you can step up to create these communities yourself and set that expectation that when you're in here, you're going to be taken care of. You're going to feel like you belong because we understand you and we go through the same process with you. We win together, we lose together, and that's very much a key component of communities, because it is that. So again, a lot of things spoken about today, but I understand that you might have some questions, and I'd love to spend the remaining time here. We got about 10 minutes to do that. So again, if you want to join one of our communities or just explore those a little bit more, we'd love to have you. And we know that there is a place for you inside of the SPI sort of environment here, smartpassiveincome.com/community. But we also have some time for Q&A. So what questions can we answer for you? If you have a question to help us out in the chat, 'cause sometimes the chat goes wild, type question in all caps and then your question. That way we can serve you from there. So as Kathy says, just as in real life, community is give and take. And again, another issue or thought that a lot of people have with relation to community is like the platform, right? Which platform do I use to create a community? Which one is the best to find communities on? Is it Discord? Is it Circle? Is it what have you? All of these places can eventually get you to where you want to go, right? They all also have a bit of a learning curve. Facebook had a learning curve when we were first on it back in the day. And it's important to not let the technology stop you from making connections, right? Find the easiest way to connect with people on these platforms. And yes, when you go, I know when I go on a Discord, for example, there's like a million rooms. There's like automation things happening and all these emojis everywhere that just honestly on that particular platform usually overwhelm me. I got invited to this like cryptocurrency one, and I was just like, I have no idea what's going on in here. It was the least user-friendly community I was ever a part of. However, I was still able to find like one room that had people that I could talk to and connect with. And from there, things started to branch out. Spaces on Circle are a lot easier to get involved with. And if you are creating a community, 2 things we highly recommend using Circle. And number 2, we also highly recommend a summit that's going to be announced very soon. You're the first to know, but later in this month, we are teaming up with the team at Circle to share a little bit more about creating communities and specifically the business of communities, the business model of communities. So look out for that. That's going to be really fun. I know a lot of you here want to create a community or even have one already, and that will be massively valuable. But again, today was about you being involved with communities. So here are some questions that are coming in. Question from Jason, starting with 0. How do you bring people from Facebook or Discord, etc., to your own community? That's a great question. Jillian, you want to start with that? So if you have nobody in your own community, how do you begin to even attract people to your own?
Jason, I'm going to tell you a secret that actually isn't a secret, and I've said before. You don't need that many people to start a community. I think people get really hung up on the idea like, I need 100 people to launch with. No, you can launch with like 4 or 5 people, and that's actually going to be a really fun experience for those people. If you already know who your super fans are, who are your kind of ride or dies, that's your group. And just go to them and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what it's going to look like. I want you to be a founding member and help me build it. Like, I want to hear your feedback and like, what kind of spaces do you want? What kind of events do you want? That kind of thing. And bring them in and try some things out. And then, open it up. You could even, if you have any sort of list, you can even just say, hey, we're starting a community. Here's what we're thinking. We're looking for our founding members. I think it was before my time, but I think that's kind of how Pro first started, right, Pat? Mm-hmm. It was a call out to our existing audience or, the people who already know who we are and saying, hey, we're creating a professional community for entrepreneurs who are kind of, in that range where they've launched, they have the website, they have the products, they have the customers, but want to keep stepping up. And so our founding members came from that. And then over time, word of mouth, referrals, we grew it. So don't get too hung up on actual numbers. And I know you didn't, but just small little group to start, figure things out with them. They're going to be more forgiving and they're going to be your champions. When you say, okay, let's, we're going to open the doors. This is what it's going to look like. They're going to say, oh, I know someone who'd be perfect. Mm-hmm. And then someone joins and then be like, oh, let me show you the ropes. Like will be very invested as a community member. And you want to make sure they feel loved through that whole process.
There's also a lot of like more general communities in the space that you're in where you can, and again, there's you got to be careful here. You don't want to feel like you're just going into these communities to take community members into your own. You provide value there. You show up as an expert. You create one of these posts about your expertise. And what ends up happening is naturally people will be gravitated toward you and will want to connect more with you. And then those few contacts could end up becoming a small group that can then expand over time. That could be maybe seated as a sub niche or sub community within that space. I've seen that happen before too. Creators go, wow, you are so good at this. Can we create a space that maybe you own and you moderate? And then you can go from there and you actually can, I've seen this happen. You build a brand within a brand. It's kind of, you build a micro community within somebody else's brand and then you can kind of branch out from there. I've seen that happen time and time again, which is really fun. Let's see. Willa here says, question, where do you find communities? How? I mean, away from Facebook. So Facebook is usually the first place we think about. LinkedIn is great as well. Where I would recommend, and Jillian, we'll get your 30-second answer after this, is look for the creators in the space that you're in. Those creators, many of them will have communities that you can join. And I would start with your favorite or the ones that seem to be where you want to be in the future, the ones that you vibe with. They will often have communities in different kinds of ways. Maybe it actually is a Facebook community. Maybe it's a Circle community like what we have. Maybe it's actually just on social media, but it's really in Instagram using a particular hashtag that everybody connects with each other on, or Twitter. You're going to find under the creator where their people show up, and you can be a part of that community and provide value there too. How about you?
Yeah, I just put in the chat. I'll keep it PG, but F Facebook. It's not a good place to be in a community. And frankly, if someone's, and no offense to anybody doing this, but my opinion, strong opinion, hot takes here. If you have a community on Facebook, you are renting your space. Like it's a social platform. It's not meant for community. And tomorrow you could lose the whole thing if Facebook shuts it down. And they have done that with, like, say, their Groups app years ago. And so I will not invest my time in a group run on Facebook. if someone's serious about running a community, I think they should consider not using that as a platform, not using any social platform as a platform, even if it means an expense to you to have control over your platform. So tie right over. But I think some of the best ways to find communities, and even increasingly the way I find them, is just curiosity. So if it's a topic specific, support specific, are you looking for those resources online anyways? And then do the resources you find that you like have a community component to them? And it doesn't have to be a big organization. It doesn't have to be like the Pepsi support group or, like whatever. It doesn't have to be this corporate thing. In fact, that's probably not going to be a very fun community. But say you really like a creator and you subscribe to their newsletter and they're just awesome and you just love what they're about. Do they have a community that you could join? Because like Pat was saying earlier, if there's someone that you just really enjoy their voice and the way they interact and stuff, they might have a community. They might not, but through them, you may be able to find one, you know? So I think you have to kind of put yourself out there. You have to identify, what is it that I want in a community? And once you know that and like the topic, etc., then you can kind of go forth. Is there a club like in real life that has to do with this thing? And does anybody in that club know of a community?
Exactly. That's how I was going to answer Jacob's question here, which is to create a community around an extremely narrow, specific, obscure interest. How do you go about finding other people who may be interested in that? Number one, you could create around that and attract people who get interested. And even if people aren't interested, they might know somebody who's interested and can feed their way to you. But secondly, I think to make it even easier, find one person in some way, shape, or form, online or offline at an event. Events are great, by the way, to build community because you see those people are so passionate that they traveled somewhere or spent time out of their day to go to a virtual event about a particular topic. Anyway, one person. And when you find that one person, maybe they're a little bit more experienced in that space, they're going to likely know a lot more than you and be able to guide you and tell you, oh yeah, we have this little group here. Or it might even be as simple as, yeah, I'll add you to the group chat, right, on text message. Like it could be that, and that's maybe where it starts. Let's see. What top tip would you give to a course creator in setting up their first community alongside their first early courses? I would recommend coming to the Business of Community Summit later this month because we're going to go deep into all that. We have keynote speakers, panel. I'll be doing a workshop. Jillian will be there as well to talk all about the business of community and especially for like a first timer. And that will relate to courses as well. Eva says, how do you balance bringing focus to your core work with responding and posting in a community? So you'll definitely want to, number one, set expectations up front for both your community and to yourself. I know a lot of people who create communities and they're like, yeah, I can totally be in there all the time, 5 hours a day. And then, in reality, it's not even possible at all. And of course, that's not great for both sides, and you'll get overworked and overwhelmed, and people will have this expectation that you're going to show up and answer questions when you don't. So I think it's really important to really gauge an understanding of how much you can fit you into this community, and you do want to honor that time. You want to block that time out and dedicate that time to it. What has been really helpful is as your community continues to grow, you can promote people within the community to become moderators to help out a little bit more and keep some of that watch time that you would normally do yourself. Or your business might grow to a point similar to SPI where you can hire a person like how we hired Jillian and more recently a couple other people, David and Ashley, to help out with it with our communities as well as the community has grown. So it's definitely a phased approach, I would say. But when starting out, setting that expectation quickly up front is going to be really, really clear. And I'm sorry I'm going quickly through these because we are almost at time. In fact, we are at time. But I'm going to answer these last couple questions that I see here from Prawa and Adrian. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Pat Flynn, and we can talk more about this. But this has been incredible. Or even after this stream ends, maybe you can pop your question. It'll turn into a comment, and then we could respond to it sort of asynchronously from there. How about that? I hope that you've gotten a lot of value out of this. This has been super fun. And Jillian, thank you for spending time here to be here and to serve the audience like we always do. And I hope that everybody will come join us at smartpassiveincome.com/community inside of one of our communities. To finish up, Prawa says, how can a big global brand protect their reputation from possible hateful comments inside a private community? That's a great question. Number one, a clear set of rules, right? Terms of conditions or terms of like usage, essentially, that we have even inside of SPI Pro. Here's what this is for. Here's what we expect. And this is something that everybody who goes through the onboarding process sees, so that if something does happen, we know that they've seen that. And so it's not on us at that point, and we can take the actions required, right? We could have a whole nother hour discussion, right, Jillian, about these kinds of situations that might happen in a community, and we might have to do that because this is something
And
that
they will happen.
I think it's a great topic. But the other thing is having a filter on the front end can help out as well, right? This is the difference between a free Facebook community that everybody can join to one that maybe is a paid community where people are paying to be there. They're less likely to come in to just troll, right? And, we can have a lot more deeper discussion about that. Jillian, do you have any thoughts about that real quick?
Yeah, and just to clarify for Katana, apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right. It's still community guidelines. Like even if you have a community that the intention of the community is to talk about sensitive topics, you have to set the guardrails up from when someone joins. Be like, hey, these are the things we talk about here. So one, opt out now if that is not going to work for you. Two, if you're in, here are the parameters that we safely talk about these things so that it doesn't get out of control. It's so important to have really, and it should be like a living document. Ours are, you can actually, I think now, yeah, you can go to smartpassiveincome.com/community-guidelines. And you can see we recently made our community guidelines for all community everything public. And that's a living document. That will change. It'll change maybe even this year, and that's because as things happen and we're like, we should clarify this, or we should add something. And so it's super important. And then if you join our communities, you will also see our moderation policies. And so we put that all out there. So as people are, we want people to be safe. We want to make sure people aren't soliciting and joining our communities just to get customers. We will remove those people. And so we explain like, hey, if you step outside the expectations or the behavior expectations, here's what happens. And depending on the severity, depends on what we do.
Awesome.
I love community guidelines so much.
And that's why we love you. Jillian, thank you so much. I answered Adrian's question on text or on the chat here. He's starting a podcast, by the way. So good luck, Adrian. We'll see you in Power Up Podcasting, and stoked for you. And hopefully maybe see you in the communities. But Katana and William and All Seasons Co. and Willa and everybody else here, and Kathy, thanks for moderating as well. And Mandy's here, Sandy. This has been tremendous. This has been a really, really great conversation, a really important one. I hope it has been helpful. And it's just one of those little micro things that often just gets overlooked, but it is so important, especially with where things are going. And you will be joining more communities down the road. We want you to get the most out of it, and maybe it'll be one of ours, and we hope it is. So if that is going to be in your future, head on over to smartpassiveincome.com/community. We'd love to see you in one of our communities, and have an amazing day. Thank you, Jillian. Appreciate you, and thank you everybody for watching. Bye. Have a good one.